So obviously the last year with COVID has been a pretty crazy upheaval. At the start of the first lockdown, everyone was just in existential crisis mode. We're wondering if just the arts infrastructure or anything, events, anything like that would just completely collapse. And so it was a very kind of shaky time to be a musician or to be anyone, you know, but especially in arts and events. But I think once we were allowed to work under restrictions and do rehearsals and recordings about November last year, it really gave a boost to everyone who had those opportunities. Not every musician though has been as lucky as the likes of Crash or some of the other ensembles who've done recorded gigs and kind of online festival streaming gigs. So I think it's something to be grateful for, that, you know, the resources are there for what we've done, but I think it's still a lot of people locked out as well. So it's, you know, it's important to acknowledge that.
Specifically about the piece, each piece.
Grave Goods is one of my own guitar solo compositions, and it's one of the two compositions I'm playing today that explore a kind of fairly radical altered tuning and kind of try to reshape the landscape of the instrument and kind of use that as an opportunity to draw out new possibilities, both kind of melodic and harmonic possibilities as well as timbral ones. So it's using open harmonics and then this really radically detuned low E string, which kind of really expands the sound of the guitar and makes it almost kind of pianistic in terms of its range. That's kind of the focus of Grave Goods in a more melodic sense, and kind of trying to make the guitar sound a little bit not like a guitar where possible. The only in-person public audience I've had since the start of lockdowns was Kilkenny Arts Festival 2020 back in last August, when I was part of the Encounters series, where individual members of Crash and other musicians played to audiences of one or small units of a few people or families or couples, which was really amazing because it was just this intense kind of performer and tiny audience in a room, both encountering live music with the other for the first time in about, at that stage, in about 7 months. It's very different from a normal gig, and it definitely kind of had a sense of weight to it, and I'm grateful that we got to have that experience, and I think a lot of other musicians involved were. Stridula is using the same tuning but exploring it in a radically different way, where it's using this harmonics technique, I'd call it a percussive harmonics technique. It's fairly uncommon, but basically where I'm covering a harmonic on the upper frets here with my right hand, and then I'm hammering on with the left hand, but it creates this kind of woody, sometimes metallic timbre. And the name relates to stridulation, which is the kind of scratching and chirping sounds that insects and some other animals produce. And the piece kind of draws a bit on that kind of animalistic kind of chirping, scratching energy, and then the final part of the piece, which is a bit of a kind of explosion, actually transcribes a recording of a beetle stridulation that I found while digging in for interesting sounds, and it kind of transcribes the rhythm and the shapes of that onto the guitar. I think personally there's been a little bit of the back to the drawing board, kind of work on the chops stuff, which has been, I suppose, a positive, because it's the idea that you'll be out of action in terms of live gigs, especially at the start of all this, kind of put it in my head and probably in some people's heads that you know, now's the time to kind of upskill and revisit things. So I've been actually doing quite a lot of playing and practicing in a more kind of focused way amid all that. On one hand, it's kind of like, well, you have all this time to play with, but then there is the Groundhog Day element. So I think now any kind of novelty is really welcome, and I think really good for creativity, because when you're indoors for days on end, which is easy to do still, you can kind of run out of steam. And, you know, I think it's important to get out and have any kind of experience, whether that's going for a coffee or walk into a different park, just to keep things fresh. The third piece is a piece called Solace by Jonathan Nangle, Irish composer, and it's my first time performing this one live, and it's a beautiful, simple piece. The name means light for any non-Irish speakers out there, and I think that name really reflects the kind of calm simplicity of the piece, where these kind of simple chords are kind of almost floating and changing in subtly different ways, almost as if from different angles. It's a beautiful, calm little kind of vignette. I'm finishing my program with the third movement of Steve Reich's work for guitar and pre-recorded guitars, electric counterpoint. So it was originally commissioned by Pat Metheny, the famous jazz guitarist, and he recorded 10 versions of himself, playing 10 different lines composed by Steve Reich, and then performed a final 11th part on top, which is what I'm performing today, along to these 10 versions of Pat Metheny. And when Steve Reich composed the work, which kind of has a similar kind of intense layering and locking of multiple versions of the same material, he was influenced a lot by Central African horn music and some of the polyrhythms and kind of subtle changes of meter and feel that are inherent in a lot of that music. And it's a bit of a kind of seminal electric guitar in contemporary music work, so it's definitely one that every guitarist working in my niche kind of has to have a go at, you know.